Hey, I'm Chef Tom.
And I'm Chef Britt with atbbq.coom.
And this is Red, White, and Q. Hey guys, today I'm down in Mulvane, Kansas. We're prepping for a really cool new burger recipe, the pulled pork beer can burger. So Chef Britt and I are down at Stroot Lockers. We're getting ready to join our buddy Justin, who's gonna break down a half hog for us down into the primal cut so we can make that pulled pork for the burger. Hey Justin.
How's it going? How you doing today?
Good, good. How you doing?
Well, you want to get started? Come on
Yeah,
back.
what do you got for us?
Well, I got a half a hog. You wanting the feet on it or not?
Nah.
No feet. Pretty much I'm just cutting that at the joint where I would break it off. And then this here, I'm coming, right here's your tenderloin.
Okay.
I'm just gonna eyeball a line right to where I come out, right at the tip of this bone.
Right.
And then I'm gonna have my loin and my belly. I'm leaving my knife right along these bones.
Okay.
Because truthfully, this is your most expensive part of the hog,
Right.
is the belly. So we leave very little on the spare rib and most of it on the belly. And then that'd be your boneless belly.
Yep. So this was that part I was talking about. Would be great for rolling up and you truss it and then create the crackling on the skin on the outside and cook it whole.
Oh, yeah?
So kind of cook it more like a roast. Now what about with the loin here? Is there a way for us to get that chine bone off of there so we can slice some steaks out of that or some chops out of
Some
it?
chops.
Or what do you think?
I could tell you I could do, if you want me to chime it, I would rather cut it off about here, where you'd have your loin in,
Okay.
and then I can chime that and make it to where you could cut right through the ribs.
That'd be great.
So that would be like your sirloin ends about right in here, where that first vertebrae goes straight. You can kind of see it. Skin the ham.
So essentially just working the knife right underneath the skin all the way down the leg there and then staying as shallow as possible so that you don't lose any of that fat.
Just pulling back the skin, letting it knife just guide itself.
Just following the contour. And we might just keep that skin and maybe make some chicharrones.
Yeah. Fry it up.
There's really not much waste there either when you guys break it down. I mean, most of that can be used.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it all can be used. I mean, maybe not to smoke with or, barbecue, but you can make sausage out of it and do other things with it.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you guys smoke whole hogs as a
Yeah.
service here.
Yeah,
Do you think we could check out your smoker?
yeah, we can go check it out.
Word.
I've got hams in there right now, so
How many hams do you get in there?
if it's full, I think I can fit 20 in there.
Wow. And what are you running it at temperature-wise?
Temperature right now is probably sitting at about 180. It's been running since 7 this morning.
Okay.
So I started about 160, let everything get dry, and I start my smoke box right away. And once it gets, after about an hour, I crank it up to 180.
What sort of fuel are you guys using?
Hickory sawdust is what it is.
Okay. Yeah, it smells like hickory in here
Yeah,
for sure.
it's hickory sawdust. We've got our hot box over there.
Yeah.
It lets it go, and
Think we could take a peek?
yeah.
Well, you guys are hopping. You're not slowing down anytime soon.
We always stay busy, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's
Good.
awesome.
We appreciate that you're doing what you're doing in the community. You know, it's nice to have shops like this that are still around. So
Yeah.
it's not the first time we've come calling for something that we couldn't find anywhere else.
Yeah,
Right.
we can get about anything.
Yeah. There it is. Half a hog.
That's it.
I'm excited. Thank you, Justin. Really appreciate it. I'm excited. We got all this meat to work with. We're gonna make some pulled pork out of that whole shoulder, and then just this crazy beer can burger, just a big old, like a half pound of beef filled full of pulled pork, and we'll try and fit it on a bun. It's gonna be crazy, but it should be a lot of fun. The rest of it, we're stoked just to cook up for the customers over at atbbq. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to have us and show us how to break that thing down. That's pretty cool.
No problem. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get out of your hair.
Thanks for showing us
Yeah,
around.
nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Justin.
Alrighty, take care, guys.
All right, we're back on the patio. We're getting ready to cook up our pork shoulder. Now, this is the Boston butt and the picnic together in one piece. And so it's a pretty big piece of meat, which is great for feeding a crowd at one of your summer barbecues. And it's also what we're gonna use for our pulled pork later for our pulled pork beer can burger. All right, so here's our shoulder. This is the fat cap side. We've taken the skin off because honestly, it's better when we turn it into chicharron for another project. And then this would be the opposite side. This is the butt here that you're used to seeing, that flap that we typically trim out, and we're gonna get into that. And then down here, the picnic. So we're gonna start on the fat cap side. As you can see over here, it's got a pretty big fat cap, and then there's that false cap. So we're actually gonna take all of this off. We'll save it for trim, for making burgers and sausage later. But we wanna get down to this flesh so we can get this seasoned. Now, I always try to mention this when we're trimming our pork butts, or in this case, the entire shoulder, but specifically on the butt where that big fat cap is. You definitely could leave that fat cap on, and it would cook really well. I mean, it would, insulate it a bit. The problem is you're not gonna get any seasoning or smoke through the fat cap down to this meat. Now, there's plenty of intramuscular fat running through this meat, which is what really keeps the pork butt moist and juicy in the end. So I'm not too concerned about having the fat cap on the outside, which is really just going to melt off during the cooking process. In the end, you're gonna pull that off anyway because you're not going to be chewing on all that fat, and you'll just have that gray, unseasoned meat underneath of it. So instead, we put the seasoning right on the meat. So fat cap looks good now. We're gonna come down to the picnic end and take off some of this silver skin, which is just really tough, never breaks down in that cooking process. So we might as well take it off so we're not chewing on it later. Next, we're gonna come to the opposite side, and once again, we're gonna find that crevice where these muscles meet, and we're gonna get rid of all this extra stretchy, stringy, chewy, weird stuff because it just has a strange texture. I mean, it's not gonna hurt you if you eat it, but nobody really wants to be chewing on that. So we're gonna get rid of that, and we do that by coming in here. You can actually get in here without the knife and just see where these muscles come together. Underneath here is the blade bone. And you can just start to take some of this stuff out of here. Again, you may find a bit of silver skin down here. We'll get right underneath that, start to peel all of this out. So generally the idea is anything that you wouldn't want to chew on later or anything that gets in the way of the seasoning getting to the meat is going to come out of here. So we've got this thing cleaned up pretty nice. Now what we're going to do is get it injected with some of our Smoke on Wheels pork marinade and injection. Now this is a really great marinade and injection to use. The base is apple juice and pineapple juice, two of my favorite flavors to go with pork, but it's also got some soy sauce and some other really interesting stuff going on. We're gonna start down here at the butt end, and we're just gonna kind of work our needle in there, create a little pocket, pump it full of liquid, and then we're gonna move in sort of a grid pattern to make sure that we get all of this pork shoulder covered. And you can see as we create that pocket, we make some room for the injection. And as you pump that injection in, you can see it plump up. A little bit's gonna come out, don't worry about that because there's more of it that's staying inside. So now I'm just working underneath the blade bone here. This big old shoulder can handle a lot of this injection, and it'll let you know when it's done. When it doesn't want any more, it starts spitting it back out. All right, we're starting to get into the leg bone over here now, so kind of just got to work around that. We can flip this thing over to try and get a little bit more injection on the opposite side. Now I'm going to come right back over here to that blade bone and get this piece of meat just to make sure that we got that muscle on top of the bone. We've got this thing pumped full of injection now, adds lots of juiciness to the end product, adds a lot of really great flavor as well. I'm going to mop up any excess that's kind of on the surface here, but we're also going to leave some of that excess moisture right there on the surface to work as our binder. So that's what's going to help our rub stick to the pork. Speaking of the seasoning, today we're going to be using the Plowboys Yardbird rub. So this is just a fantastic pork and chicken rub. It was designed as a chicken rub, but has ended up being just as successful and honestly just as delicious on pork, and that's what we use on more than anything nowadays. But this is kind of our classic like atbbq flavor combination here, is that smoke on wheels pork marinated injection with Plowboys Yardbird. So we're going to work to cover every surface in the rub. Remember, this is a big piece of meat, so it can handle the seasoning. And then we just want to make sure that it's set up and attached before we flip it over and season the other side. All right, it's looking good on this side, so we're going to flip it over. And again, we've got enough of that excess moisture on the surface, just the residual stuff from the injection, that's going to work as our binder. Otherwise, we'd probably be using some mustard or something like that. Just a thin layer, not much, to make sure that rub sticks. So pretty simple process. It just adds a ton of flavor to the pork shoulder. We're gonna let that rub set up. We want it to darken. It should attach to the meat. It should start to look wet on the surface, and then we'll know it's ready to go on the smoker. Today we're cooking on the Yoder Smoker's YS640S pellet grill, and we're gonna be cooking hot today. So we're going like the 325 to 350 range, which is a little bit unusual for when you're smoking a big piece of meat, but we're trying to get this thing done quick. So we're gonna do a couple of things to make this process go a little bit smoother, because maybe you're not used to cooking a pork shoulder at a temperature this high, but I think it's worth the experience and worth seeing. All right, so we're going on the second shelf, which is going to give us a little bit of distance from that radiant heat coming off of the diffuser plate. And that's really important when you're cooking hot. All right, so we've got a couple of probes that we can place in here to see what's going on. We'll get one down there on the butt end, and the other one we'll put on the picnic end. You want to try and stay away from the bone in the deepest part of the meat. So the other thing we're going to do to help us along in this cook is add the amazing tube smoker in here, filled with the same cherry and pecan pellets that we're using to cook the pork today. We get this thing lit up. And I'm going to blow it out now that we've got the pellets burning back. And what's going to happen here is this is going to intensify the smoke flavor since we're doing a shorter cook. So shorter cook, more smoke. So we're about 4 hours into this cook now. You guys can see there that the pork butt is at 208 internal. That's down there at the butt end. The picnic end's a little bit behind at 171. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take this whole thing off of here now, and I'm gonna slice that butt end off because it's done. And we'll let the end with the bone in it cook a little bit longer, wrapped in butcher paper. What a beautiful bark on here. That color's fantastic. So down here you can see how soft this is. I'm gonna pull that probe out. Just look how tender that is. So there's that blade bone there. And of course the leg bone is up this way. So we're just gonna take this thing off of here. So I'm just gonna find the end of this blade bone here, and we'll go ahead and take this end off. And this is gonna be just right for what we need to make our beer can burgers. But yeah, you can see how that's just ready to shred. Now you can wrap in butcher paper, you can wrap in foil, either way will work just fine. But we've got the butcher paper out today, so that's what we're gonna do. So I'm just gonna try and get this paper nice and tight around the pork shoulder. And go a couple layers deep to hold everything in. All right, so right back on the top shelf there, we'll get some probes in here so we can monitor what's going on. And close this up. Still running that pit at the same temperature. We're just gonna monitor the internal temperature of the shoulder, and we'll pull it off when it's tender past 200 degrees internal. So since we're gonna use this butt end for the burgers, I'm just gonna go ahead and get it all shredded up, and we can jump into making the beer can burger a little later. We'll set this aside, let it cool out for a bit. I'm gonna throw our pulled pork into the fridge because we're gonna be getting into that beer can burger tomorrow. Now I wanna get into assembling the beer can burgers, but before we can do that, we've gotta make our beer cheese sauce. So we're gonna start off with a cup of heavy cream right into the skillet. And I'm gonna add to that a cup of beer. I'm gonna use a lighter beer. So this is the Wooshock wheat from WBC here in Wichita. It's a nice light summer drinking wheat beer. And we'll start with 1 cup of that. And we wanna bring this up to a simmer. Now you wanna make sure that you have the rest of your ingredients ready to go when this comes up to a simmer. So I'll show you guys what we have. We have here 8 ounces of white American cheese that's been shredded, 4 ounces of smoked cheddar. Then we're gonna add a little bit of mustard sauce. This is a smoky cowboy mustard, and a little bit of hot sauce. This is optional, but I really like the kick and I like the tang. And then for our thickening agent, we have 4 teaspoons of cornstarch. So we've got a good simmer going on the cream and the beer. I'm gonna start adding just a handful of cheese at a time. We'll just constantly be whisking this in. Once you see that that cheese is melted, go ahead and add some more. Now we add just a handful at a time for a couple of reasons. One thing is that if we dumped it all in at once, it would just drop the heat level completely of the cream and the beer, and we'd have a long road ahead of us of trying to bring it back up. The other thing that might happen is you get some cheese that clumps together, and then it's kind of gonna take a while to whisk it out. So just go a little bit at a time and be patient. All right, so this is the last of our cheddar. So we've got that nice smoky cheddar with a good bite to it. We've got the creamy, salty American that melts so easily. Then we're gonna add some of our seasoning agents. So for the mustard, we're gonna go for about 2 tablespoons of this mustard. Of course, you're just doing this to taste though, so however you like it. Experiment a little bit. And then we're gonna add a little bit of our Killer Hogs hot sauce. This is starting to thicken up a bit, but we want a bit of a thicker consistency for our sauce, so that's why we're going to add the cornstarch. Now cornstarch you can't just add straight in or it'll clump up, so you need to add a little bit of liquid to it first to dissolve it. Cold liquid. And then just move that around until there's no more clumps in there. And then this we can whisk right into the sauce. Now the way cornstarch works, once it hits that heat, it starts to activate and thicken. Immediately you can see how big those bubbles are getting. I'm gonna turn the heat down. So we're over like a lower heat now, medium low. I'm gonna go all the way low here. And we're just gonna whisk this for a minute, make sure it doesn't scorch. It actually needs a few minutes to kind of cook out any raw flavor from the cornstarch. Then we can hit it with some salt and pepper and call it good. All right, before I hit this with any other seasonings though, I'm gonna give it a little taste. Ooh, that's good. I would go very light on the salt. There's plenty of salt in that cheese, so we're not gonna need a lot more. We will add a little bit of black pepper as well. Man, creamy, smoky, mustard. I love that mustard in there. All right, this is perfect. This is good to go. I'm gonna set this aside and build our burgers. So what we have here is a couple pounds of 80-20 ground beef. We're gonna divide these into half-pound patties. So the way we build this beer can burger, if you've never seen one of these done before, is you wanna flatten out your big old patty, take your beer can and smash it right down into it. And then you're going to build the patty around the beer can to create a little cup that can hold any of the toppings that you want to put on your burger. Try to go for even thickness all the way around, including on the bottom. But it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just going for something that will cook evenly. All right, so I'm going to repeat that with the other 3 patties here. Next thing we're gonna do is take a slice of bacon and wrap it around each one of these. This kind of holds everything together, as well as adding some extra moisture to the outside, because we are gonna be smoking this burger, which is a little unusual for a cheeseburger. Just pin that in place with a toothpick. Probably not totally necessary, but I'll make sure it doesn't go anywhere. All right, so now that we've got these all wrapped up, we're gonna go ahead and fill them with the pulled pork from that pork shoulder that we smoked. And I've got this stuff all shredded up already. Gonna mound that up on top of there. Now you could put anything in here that you like. If you wanna throw some onions in here, throw some onions in there, that's a great idea. I'm glad you thought of that. For us today, we are just doing pulled pork and our beer cheese sauce. And that beer cheese sauce is going to ensure that this pork that we've already smoked for so long, it doesn't dry out as the burger smokes. So now we're just gonna smother this in that beer cheese sauce, and this stuff will just melt into the pork and keep everything nice and moist while the burger is smoking. I'm gonna cap it all off with a slice of smoked Gouda. Another little thermal protection barrier there for the pulled pork. And this monstrosity is ready to go to the smoker. Now, just like we did with the pork shoulder, we're gonna be smoking our burgers on the YS640S. The Yoder Smoker's pellet grill is running at 275 degrees right now, and we're burning cherry and pecan pellets. So we're going on the second shelf with the pulled pork beer can burger. These are ridiculous and going to be so delicious. All right, you know what I want to do before we go any further is top this off with a little bit more pulled pork on top. So think of this as kind of like a little pork crouton on top of here. This stuff's gonna crisp up while it smokes and add another layer of texture to the burger. If we're gonna go over the top, we might as well go all the way, right? All right, let's close it up and let it get to smoking. So while those burgers are smoking away, we're gonna put together a slaw that's also gonna go on our burger. We're gonna start off with about 4 cups, maybe a little bit more here of our slaw mix. So this is just red and green cabbage, and some shredded carrots. And then we're gonna put together a really simple dressing to go on top of this. So we're gonna need a half cup of mayonnaise to get this started. We're doing a creamy mayonnaise-based slaw dressing. Gonna add to that 2 tablespoons of our Big Rick's jalapeno honey mustard. So we got a little bit of tanginess and a little bit of sweetness here. And then continuing down that barbecue path, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of Firebug Hot. You could use a mild sauce as well, but just the idea is just one of your go-to barbecue sauce. Also gonna shake in just a little bit of barbecue rub. We've got the Killer Hogs, the barbecue rub. And here in a minute, I'm gonna work in some pickled jalapenos into the slaw as well. I'm gonna add just a little bit of that pickling juice, probably about a teaspoon. And give that a whisk. Very nice. Nice little bite to it, nice creaminess to it. That's our barbecue slaw dressing. So let's chop up some of these pickled jalapenos and bring it all together. I'm gonna go for about a half cup of these pickled jalapenos. So just a rough chop on these. And these are just quick pickles that I made from scratch, but there's not much to it. We'll throw a recipe out there here in the future. In fact, I'll include it with everything else you see today. I love the colors on this slaw. Between the red and green, a little bit of orange, very bright and colorful. Add that dressing over the top. All right, we're just gonna get our hands dirty. Toss this all around to coat. And this can hang out in the fridge for a couple of hours while we wait on everything else to get ready. It's only gonna get better as it sits. Well, it's been a little more than an hour that our burgers have been smoking, and they're coming up to temperature. When we're checking the temperature on these things, I'll show you right where we wanna look, but what we're looking for is about 155 to 160 for a finishing temp. Don't these just look amazing? They smell so good. And look at our crispy little pork topping on the outside. I love it. Remember, we've got like this thick meat cup, so we're checking on the edges, right? Where the meat or the burger is the thickest, and that's where we're looking for that 160. So we've got these onion buns that I've toasted off. This is a fairly sturdy bun. I mean, it's soft, but it holds up pretty well, which is what you're looking for with a burger of this size. I'm gonna go down with a layer of our slaw first. Then we'll get that big gnarly beer can burger patty on there. And since we still have some of this delicious beer cheese, I'll do a little bit more over the top. Add a little extra crunch and bite with some red onions, and we'll call it good. Boom. Woo! That looks like it'd feed a family of 4 right there. It looks crazy, right? I'm gonna try to bite through it anyway. Wow. I'll be honest, there's times when we just try to outdo ourselves around here. And this may have started out that way, but that tastes incredible. It's totally over the top and totally worth it. There's an awful lot going on in this burger, but surprisingly, all of the things are working together. The first thing I noticed when I bite into it is it's definitely the smokiest burger I've ever had, which makes sense when you think about the fact that it sits in the smoke for over an hour. Like, that's not normal when you're eating a cheeseburger, right? But the other things that are working together are the textures. I mean, you've got a little bit of crunch from the slaw, from the onion, from the outside of the burger, but it's also very soft, very delicate in the middle. That pulled pork, it's not dried out at all. It's got all kinds of moisture in it. So that works really well with the beer cheese. The beer cheese is incredible. You gotta love liquid cheese, especially on a burger ridiculous as this one. I really did enjoy this process. I knew this was gonna be a crazy burger coming out of the gate, but I mean, I think it came out really well. Thank you guys for going on this journey with us. Certainly you don't have to cook an entire pork shoulder just to make a cheeseburger, but it seems like there's always pulled pork left over, so maybe it's something you want to give a shot in the future. A big shout out and a thank you to the whole crew and Justin over at Stroot Lockers for hooking us up with our pork for this week's episode. Be sure to check out the next episode of Red, White, and Q when Chef Britt makes a strawberry shortcake cobbler. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and check out atbbq.coom for all of the products featured in this week's episode. Later, guys. Be good.